Hey, Steve Fortner here with Synth Expert, and I am very lucky to have serial number 3 of the new Korg Prologue here. I'm hoping to be able to give you one of the very first looks on the internet at Korg's new hybrid analog synth. Now, when you hear hybrid, you might think of digital oscillators feeding a analog subtractive filter and envelope bank. That is not the case here. It's hybrid in the sense that you have 2 fully analog VCOs and then 1 digital oscillator. Now, there's 4-octave and 5-octave models. The 4-octave model has 8 voices of polyphony. The 5-octave model has double that, 16 voices. But you have 2 VCOs on both, which do your standard complement of analog waveforms. And you have a 3rd oscillator called the multi-engine. The multi-engine is an analog, it's a digital DSP oscillator, which does a simple form of FM with 1 carrier and 1 modulator. They call that the VPM, or variable phase modulation oscillator. It does noise, and you can also load user waveforms into it. Now, we don't know too much about what these are yet. We don't know if they're full-on multi-samples or single-cycle waveforms a la Prophet VS, polyevolver type thing. But you do have the capability to get hybrid kind of sounds here, like this one. And if we play with the mixer a little bit, we can see what each oscillator is adding to the character of the patch. So here's just oscillator 1. We're going to oscillator 2. You get a little nice chorus from the detune there. And then we bring in the multi-engine oscillator. And you've got that crystalline sound. Very reminiscent of the Roland D50. Take the analog oscillators out and we'll hear the digital oscillator by itself. You know, really nice, pretty crystalline textures. You have cross modulation, you have hard sync. Let me try and bring you up a sync patch. Got that Cars squawky quacky sound. Beautiful stuff. Sounds just really huge. It doesn't sound anything like the monologue or the mini-log. It really has got its own sound. Now, from a glance at the front panel, it appears we have 2 EGs. We have an EG dedicated to the amplifier, the VCA, and then we have an assignable EG for the filter. That can also be assigned to a pitch EG, which with this little switch here, you can assign to all of the oscillators, just VCO 1 and 2, leaving the multi-engine out of it, or just VCO 2. So if you want to have one of those patches where part of the sound starts in at the intended pitch, and then another part of the sound sort of sweeps and glides up to it, this makes it really easy for you to do that. With a low-pass filter section, that has a drive you can kick in at 2 different levels, sort of a little bit of overdrive on your filter, and a low cut you can kick in, which sort of makes it a little bit of a high pass filter as well. I'm not sure what the roll off frequency is, but I imagine it's something like 80 hertz or 100 hertz, something like that. And 3 levels of key tracking, you can really get some cojones on bass sounds. Kick in the drive, I'll kick it in max so you can hear it, and I'll open up the cutoff. Listen to that resonance, that's just nasty. want to filter out some of that sub bass, hit the low cut. And there's a lot of bass sounds in this thing. Sort of the first couple dozen programs are designed to impress in the retail store, which is what you have to do when you're packaging sounds for a synth. But there are a ton of bass sounds in this thing, and they're meaty, and they're dense, and chewy, and rubbery, and they're just great. That's a patch called Electro Funk. It's just one that I like because it's squirty. It's got that 70s disco sound to it. Nice synth brasses. And they're sort of darker, kind of 9 Inch Nailsy sounds like this. Let's make that even darker. Very industrial, very 9 Inch Nails throbbing gristle with this machine. Okay, so here's one of those arpeggiator patches. Now, I know you probably want to ask if it does splits and layers. Yes, it does. That parameter is in an edit menu at the program level. And there are all kinds of different ways of organizing programs. What these 8 buttons do right here, you can organize them by program number, alphabetically, by ones that you used most frequently. It'll remember that, which is pretty cool. And by ones that you've liked, like on Facebook. It's sort of a favorites bank. And there's a thing called Live Set where you can organize a bunch of programs to show up under the 8 buttons for your live set in the order in which you need them. Takes a little bit of wrapping your head around, mainly because there's really no notation on the panel itself under the 8 buttons. And I think Korg made that design decision because each of these buttons can do so many different things. Just geeking out at this point. It doesn't sound like a DSI synth, it doesn't sound like an Oberheim synth, it doesn't sound like a Roland synth. It sounds, it's got that Japanese tweezy thing that you didn't get on some of the American-made synths. And it really doesn't sound like anything else I've tried. Not exactly like it, at any rate. There's another patch on which we can see analog and digital elements getting blended very nicely. Nice sort of Janet Jackson kind of bass there. I have to call her Miss Jackson because I'm nasty. If you want classic proggy sounds, this is more than happy to dish those out. If you want more modern, aggressive, ear-shearing dance floor and industrial sounds, it is great at those as well. And another thing that I want to mention is just the build quality on it. I'm going to dial down to some more basic sorts of programs to play us out. Like that one. There, that's nice. And again, you can hear the analog quality, but also the slight bell-like quality of that digital oscillator in there as well. But, okay, the build quality, like I just said. The knobs on this are like really nice milled aluminum. The chassis is metal with these really nice wooden end pieces. The knobs turn with just the right amount of pleasant resistance. It's like you're moving a fluid head tripod on a really expensive tripod. There are a few corners cut to meet the cost, and we don't know the price yet. But for one thing, again, we don't have split and layer buttons. And to my knowledge and to the best of my exploring, the keys do not sense aftertouch, although they do sense velocity. But otherwise, the construction quality on this is just insanely good. It is like really that you have a new vintage synth in front of you. It's like this could be, if you told me this was a vintage synth on eBay, I would be like, oh, why would I never heard of the Prologue? But it really does give that impression. And I imagine Korg is going to price this rather aggressively, as they have priced all of their other analog experiments, their successful experiments, quite aggressively as well. So it's anyone's guess what that price is right now, but I'm sure this is going to make you think, well, hey, maybe it's not such a sin to max out my credit card.